Alright guys, so usually I do more educational kind of videos, but today we're going to go over a job that I did as a key grip last week on a corporate film set job. And we're going to dive in and see what it entails and all the rigging and electrical and lights involved. So let me take you through the back door here. First of all, we had to take these windows down pretty much all day because the sun was beaming in through this hallway and everything was pretty much dark the whole day. So we had to control that, block out this window. This was the little hallway that we had to store equipment. And as you can see, it starts getting worse pretty quickly. And the amount of stuff we had to bring into this small space here. Now I'm going to go through all the rigs here with detailed photos, but just to give you an overview, this is what we're kind of working with. Everything had to be up in the air. There couldn't be any stands anywhere because they were kind of shooting 360 a lot of the time. It was very quick changes and everything had to just be up in the air and be movable in the air as well. So there's a lot of different rigs going on here that I had to build out. And through building all these rigs, we pretty much used everything on the truck. So this is one area that we had. This was the main area. There was another area with the green screen. That was just, you know, green screen lighting. It wasn't super hard, but this was more technical, dramatic lighting, and they had different colors that we would change periodically depending on what the DP and gaffer wanted. So we were rocking like 8 Titan tubes. We had 2 or 4 Helios tubes, a couple light matte panels. Then we had a couple ellipsoidals here and some dados, which really came in handy because they wanted to have kind of backlit a lot of the stuff with some, they used a star filter for a lot of the camera stuff so it pops out. And I'll show you some of those photos in a second here. So for this one, I was key gripping. So I kind of just put the lights wherever the gaffer wanted. Once he talked with the DP, we had to do a lot of blacking out. For instance, if I pause it right here, if you look up above this AC unit here and I zoom in a little bit, there is a grate here from the roof that's kind of perforated metal, which let a bunch of light in. So I had to black wrap all of this. I would have rather used Duvetine, but it was very hard to even get it up there and have it stay. And using Duvetine was a little too heavy to tape it up there, so we ended up using like a full roll of black wrap to black out this whole entire area, and it continues over left side of this wall here. And we even had to go on the roof to black out a part we couldn't even reach from the inside. Now, we probably should have just blacked it out on the roof to begin with some Duvetine, but the first prep day we didn't have that option, or we didn't really know it until we kind of got into the location a little bit more. So it is what it is, but we made it work. This was a 3-day shoot. We had 2 days of shooting, 1 day of prep, and the first shooting day we were still putting up a bunch of lights because there was last minute changes. All right, so here's where kind of the madness started. The gaffer wanted a Source 4 here in the corner, but we couldn't have a beaver board or a stand or anything there. Now that we look back at it, we probably could have, but in the moment, you know, they didn't want to see anything up here on this top locker here. So I had to figure out a way to get a unit in there. And the only really good way to do it, I could have Cardellini'd on this I-beam, but there wasn't enough lip on the I-beam on this side. So I decided I had to go off of this MAME I-beam, but that made a different challenge in itself. If I zoom in here, so this I-beam has a piece of conduit on the bottom and it has one on the top as well, which really kind of boned me from using a Cardellini on there too. I couldn't get it on either side because the pipe was in the way. So I had to do a type of C-clamp around that to go up higher and grab onto the I-beam. But the I-beam, you know, it's an I-beam. It goes in the middle. So I had to use 2 pieces of 2x4 cribbing. And then on top of that, a pancake on each side. And then I had enough width to actually grip onto it. And then the pancake kind of was supported by the lip of the I-beam on the top and the bottom. So it really kind of squeezed it like a sandwich, and it was really good. And it had 2 baby pins coming off of that, so we could do 2 different lines or whatever we wanted. So one of them went over here towards the Source 4. That had to kind of be triangulated a bit because there was nowhere else to grip. So I ended up just sticking an arm outside this I-beam up top because there was actually a gap going outside. So I could just stick it out, and then we put a bag on the other side, and it basically was just holding the weight was holding it on from the I-beam. Then we came off of that, went to the other side, did a little triangulating here in the corner. There was another small gobbo, a Gary Coleman, I believe, that was going outside the same way up top, which gave us a point over there, and then we could triangulate it and then drop it down, and it was adjustable where they needed it. so we could slide it up, slide it back, or go up and down, whatever they needed. The guys started calling it transformer rigs because they were just like, they looked like transformers because I was just pretty much having to do this. You know, it doesn't look the greatest, but it worked, but it could have been done a different way if we had the right, we call it technology. If we had more technology, it could have been a little better, but that's okay. So on the other side of this was the other end of that C-clamp. They wanted a Titan tube here right above talent. So it had to be right in the middle. I was able to get a Cardellini on the other end here on this lip because it was actually a bigger lip and the piece of conduit wasn't right next to it. It's actually, this looks like a pipe or something. It's a little bit lower, so I had enough room to get it in there. And then we could adjust this Titan tube, you know, left or right, and even slide it forward and back if we added another arm onto that. And then all this cabling was going up on these, I think, EMT pipes here that ran back, and then we cleaned that up once they started rolling, but this was when I could get some photos, so everything was kind of being roughed in. This other Titan tube was kind of directly overhead of talent most of the time. They wanted another one slightly, I would say, frontal, but also worked as a backlight depending on which way they were looking at the lockers or they were looking the other way. So I had to do another type of rig here, another C-clamp here to the I-beam, which luckily I didn't have to use pancakes or anything this time because I had enough room to get it in there. And then from that I brought in, it was a Gary Coleman arm so I could bring this down, and then we put a piece of pipe in here, 5-foot piece of speed rail, 5 or 6, over to this other beam, which I could Cardellini off of. And then I had a good base platform across the whole width where I could put lights or whatever they needed it, and it was fully adjustable. So we had a dado on one end, and then we had a Titan tube on the other end, and we could slide that or adjust them as we needed throughout the 2 days. All right, so I think it was the first day of shooting, we had to add more lights over here. They wanted all these lights kind of backlit facing camera. And at this point, we were really running low on technology. We could have just used stands back here, but we would have to arm it out, and it was kind of dangerous with the weight for some of these, like the ellipsoidal. So I decided just to use some more C-clamps. We did have a few more of those. Now the problem here was this was brick, so it was good to grab onto, but it wasn't quite flush, so I had to use some cribbing. I would have used cribbing anyways, but the brick wasn't flat, so I had to find a good spot where it kind of settled down, where I could actually clamp it and it didn't pull to one side more than the other. So we had one C-clamp rig up here, and that was coming off with an arm, I think 2 arms. A short arm and a long arm. It was the Source 4 and a dado. And then we did have one stand behind it and armed out an extra dado because they're kind of light, so it wasn't too big of a deal. Then on the other side here, I did another rig the same way. Came off with another C-clamp. This one was a junior receiver. It had a junior pin going up and down, and I came off of that with a piece of 2-foot rail. We didn't have any more junior to baby pin adapters or anything, so I had to get creative. Came off with a vice grip chain grip that had a baby pin on it, and then we could put an arm on top of that, and then we could adjust that other dado as needed. The tape's not holding anything now that the clamp's on, but I had to, you know, tape the cribbing to hold it because I can't hold both ends of the cribbing plus the C-clamp and try to clamp it down at the same time because I didn't have a free pair of hands from anybody else because everybody was working. So those were kind of the 3, I call them transformer rigs that we had to do. And those were the tough ones to get in place, but once they were in place, then it was pretty locked in. It was just small adjustments. We got up on the 6-foot ladder and just made some quick adjustments before they wanted to shoot a different look or a different scene. Now here we had to use floppies because there was still some tiny bit of sunlight coming in from where we taped up over those rafters with the black wrap, but it was still coming in because it was just so many spots and it was behind things we couldn't put the wrap, so we added those so it didn't bounce off this wall here because this was a white wall. It would just bounce and then come right into the locker room area. Now here is where these were a real pain. We put Titan tubes in replacement of these. They were actually LED kind of fluorescent looking panels. So we were able to turn off these lights for most of them, but one of them didn't turn off. It was an emergency light. So we had to actually black wrap the back and then put the tube in, tape the tube, and then put the panel on, close the panel, which barely fit. With these clamp things, you had to really like push them down and almost broke some of them. And then we would have fluorescent looking lights, but without the fluorescent color, because those were LED and they were kind of really bad color quality. Light mat 2L here that would move around depending on what we needed. And all these other lights were off, these overhead lights, they were off for the actual shooting. So yeah, we're using the Alexa 35 on the Trinity gimbal, really nice. Here's it with the lights on. You can see we were doing like a blue tone at this moment. The dados in the back are on, and I was running everything off of blackout here. The gaffer had Sidus Link, and I was trying to get it set up for him, but it was a real pain in the butt So I was like, let me just bring my iPad with blackout next, which is a lot easier, especially with so many tubes and the colors they wanted. So I was doing most of the intensity and stuff with the lights. The gaffer would just tell me, you know, bring this up, bring that down. We want this color. Here you can see where that star filter really comes into play with those backlights. They had like a 5 or 6 point star filter, which looked really cool. Trying to get footage, but it's hard to, you know, get footage when you're not trying to work, but you're also not trying to look like you're goofing off. So now you can kind of see the lights overhead, how they're working. Got the two Titans up there. We also used an MC sometimes up on this. You can see we just magnetized one up on this I-beam here because we needed a little bit more punch on this wall, but we didn't have time to add another unit, so we would just throw those on real quick and easy. So here's some photos of when we did the colors in the locker room. They just kind of selected random 3 or 4 different RGB colors and went with it. You know, pretty fun project. It's a lot of work, but you know, that's how it usually is. But it's always a good time. All right, guys, so I hope you enjoyed the video. I try to give you a little bit of insight to what I do in my daily job as a key grip or a gaffer or whatever it is. I try to take pictures on set, but it's not always, you know, the greatest I can do. If you really enjoyed the video, please give me a like and subscribe. It really helps me out. If you want to see any other kind of videos like this, drop them in the comments, and we'll see you next week.